Alright, continuing chapter 6. We are Military Standardization Handbook, Petroleum Operations, Military Handbook 201B, Department of Defense, chapter 6. Returning to reading. Alright, 611, repair, overhauls, and pumps. Which occur with the pumps in either piece of the machinery in order to maintain a pump that's necessary for the efficiency it had a new and a complete maintenance cost of the minimum periodic test should be made to determine the total head of the development of the delivery capacity of the pump. The test indicated with a noticeable reduction head of the capacity. It is a sign of possible internal wear of the pump should be opened with inspection for the remedial action. Not immediate. If remedial action is not immediately taken, with the total failure of the wearing of the parts may result in the causing considerable shutdown time, excessive repair costs. Rotating elements should be removed. All the wearing parts are checked for the excessive clearance. When the worn parts should be then replaced in order to restore original efficiency. Manufacturing instructions should be followed with the handled major overhaul. All right, you're stuffing the boxes and packaging. Stuffing boxes are critical to one of the vital points of the maintenance pumping units. If the normal inspection indicate that the stuffing of the box operating is satisfactory with the undue amount of heat over the leakage, it be not tampered with. However, if found the leakage of the point with increase, it cannot be reduced normally with a slight tightening of the stuffing of the box glands. It is time to shut down the unit. Locate the trouble to restore the stuffing box's original condition. Check with the allowing, and after removing the old packing, check with the shaft of the trueness. Then make sure that it's centralized in the bore of the stuffing box. If the shaft is over the center of the respective stuffing box bore, the packaging will be tight on one side of the shaft and loose on the other, causing excessive wear over the packaging, increased leakage. Checking the clearance between the throat brush and the shaft. The clearance is too great, but the packaging will force between the bushing and the shaft, resulting in scored shaft, increasing the packaging wear. Always replace old packing with the new recommended by the pumping and the packaging manufacturer. Take steps to provide care and stock adequate supply with the proper type of the size packing, the replacement of the purpose install of the packaging in accordance with the instruction of the manufacturer. Alright, mechanical seals. Mechanically liquid seal system is properly installed, but it may be beneficial to apply with the new seals with some older type of central finger pumps, replacing the old method of shaft pumping with the many of the news by now being purchased equipped with the mechanical seal with the adequate supply with the replacement part with each of the mechanical services should be carried out. Instead, the manufacturer will recommend with the type of the special parts that should be kept on hand of each cell, as quite often the differ each type of the pump manufacturer name and the seal number that each of the units should be checked with the working spare parts. It is pointed out with the sudden failure of the sleeve of the carbon ring with a mechanical seal with a sizable leakage of the will develop. Hard to remedy such leak without having the replacement parts of the particular area, impossible to find with a substitute with the seal during the such emergency. Alright, bearings. Ball and sleeve bearings should be checked with the finite intervals located where they should be drained with the bearing housing of the bearings and the housing thoroughly cleaned. On the sleeving of the bearings, make sure the oil rings are round with the free of the turn within with the shaft. Oil piping coolers and oil sumps are forced or feed systems should be also drained with a clean thoroughly with the make sure that the oil patches are not plugged. Check with the journal sleeve with the wear with the check with the excess of the replace with the new parts. The ability of the sleeve bearing to carry the load is successfully dependent entirely on the film between the film journal of the sleeve. The particular attention should be paid in lubricating during the starting of the periods in order to prevent metal-to-metal contact. The useful life of the ball bearing correctly applied with suitable lubricate with limited only with the fatigue with the flaking of the swim over the part load carrying capacity. Surfaces, ball bearings are selected with a give satisfactory operation over a long period of time. The actual length of the surface generally depends on whether or not the bearing has been lubricated properly. Misalignment. Misalignment is frequently caused by suction of the discharge pipe string with the removal of the suction of the discharge flange bolt with the piping string with away from the pump of the flange is indicated with the piping string with the causing of the misalignment, the realignment, alignment of the pump and delivery of the line up of the piping of the pump flange just over the pipe itself supporting will cause no strain on the casing. If the pump anchorage fastening has been loosened cause of the vibration, this should be tightened and then alignment should be rechecked. Central finger pumps. When tested with the plant requirement indicated that the pump is not delivering in its rated head and capacity but is operating at a rated speed. Loose can generally are attributed with the excessive wear and clearance over the impeller of the check and the ring of the balance of the drum, the possible the plugged impeller, causing packages dismantle the pump of the check, all of the wearing parts of the excessive clearance, replacing the worn parts of the necessary at the same time. Clean casing with the removing of the scale of the deposit that have been moved, have been formed. It also makes sure that the impeller passages, liquid seal piping of the passage are clean. In the case of the horizontal split casing, central figure pumps and special attention should be paid with the clearance between the casing of the channel rings and the casing rings, diffusers, stuffing blocks, throat bushings. The internal sealing effect for these parts are accomplished by vertical faces, and therefore sufficient clearance should be allowed on the diameter of the vent. Clamping of the parts cast iron with the two halves of the assembled with failure to regard with the precaution result of the distortion of the sealing parts may be preventing the proper compression of the flange or gaskets, resulting in linkage between the stages across the parting of the flange. Its test is frequently recurrence of the reduction in the head of the capacity check of the pump manufacturer of the alternate materials is increased in the hardness of the resistance of the corrosion of the corrosion or erosion. The long life of the wearing parts of it will be obtained, resulting in fewer shutdowns and lower maintenance costs. Alright, rotary gear and type pumps. Provided with the installation and application for the correct pump will require little attention. The pump should be lubricated in accordance with the manufacturer's instructions. Should be necessary for the disassemble of the pump. Make sure all the parts are perfectly clean before reassembly. All parts should be carefully inspected with the parts are worn or replaced with all burrs and rough spots removed. The gasket of the pump, however, the case establishment of the internal pump clearance, and should be carefully replaced, and all wrinkles, rough spots should be smoothed out. And do not substitute the different number of the gaskets of the gasket material with a different thickness than originally installed with the pump, unless the internal wear indicates that thinner gasket is necessary. Reassembling light tightening the bolts are diametrically opposed to each other, pulling each bolt evenly. Alright, 612, waterfront maintenance inspections. Frequency inspection waterfront facilities equipped with the necessary to ensure the safe and efficient operation of hazard failures, breakdowns in this area will have greater disrupting effects than those occurring almost anywhere else in the plant. Operation personnel regularly stationed on the piers must be constantly be alert of the detector and report and correct the deficiency. Supervisors should make a frequent format informal inspection, but careful and review and act on reports submitted with the other inspection operation personnel of the maintenance of waterfront facilities. Discuss in greater detail access of the section of the handbook dealing with the type of the facility with the concern of the operating forces that are not reasonable with the structural maintenance. They should be familiar with each of the section of the extent that they are properly inspection. New construction exists in the facility. Cleanliness and maintenance emphasis should be placed with the neatness, order, and cleanliness in order to avoid vapor accumulation. Dripping pans should be kept clean and free of accumulated oil drippings. Household hose handle equipment. The hose handle equipment should be served regularly with a cable to the hose rigging equipment that should be oiled free of the rust and should be tested at least semi-annually. Bounding cables. The pier bounding system should be tested periodically. The resistance continually ensure that against the broken wires, the loose fittings. Hose testing. The hose must be tested at intervals of 3 months with 1.5 times with the working pressure not exceeding 125 psi. If necessary, to test the pressure of excess of 125 psi, but the design specification should be certain before testing. The hose should be marked with a date tested. Communication facilities should be kept with a good operation condition. The only approved equipment used where gasoline and jet fuels are handled. Electrical system should be carefully inspected with special attention given to the explosion-proof fixtures and fittings. Firefighting gear should be inspected regularly with it always kept ready for the use in cathodic protection. Cathodic protection system must be inspected and maintained by qualified personnel. Alright, 613, barge tankers. Vessels designed with the clean with the back of the according with the grade of the product with the last carried. Cleaning vessels are those refined product with the surface, and black vessels are those with the crude oil and black fuel oil services. Tank cleaning and gas freeing. With the purpose of the tank cleaning and gas freeing, with the ensure the barge and ship the tank for their condition, with the receive of the cargo without contamination for the product, lessen the hard hazard demand vessel due to the accumulation of flammable vapor air. Make sure the life of the vessel depends upon the treatment to give of the tank. This treatment of the tank vessel is usually semi-permanent. Placed on either clean or black oil service by black oil. Black oil products create a sludge which cannot by regulation be discharged with the general cargo. The sludge therefore has to be reclaimed. steamed and washed down to get it out of the tanks. Tank carrying with the gasoline cargo over the subject with the corrosion collection with the loose rust. The rust must be removed at the regular interval to prevent production of the contamination for the release of the flammable vapors of the tank if normally cleaned. Alright, the cleaning over the tank compartment of the method that reduces the life of the vessel, therefore should be deferred for the larger cargo can be handled without contamination. However, the cleaning is required with the danger of contamination exists for the coupled with the gas free with the necessary prior to the internal inspection and repair tanks. Alright, corrosion of vessel tanks. High corrosive of the gas of the form of the petroleum vapors are mixed with the slightly amount of the oxygen, especially with the vapor present with the other stagnant seawater ballast. Bottom plating does not corrode evenly because of the heavy pitted due to the dilution of acid form. Sweating water ballast mixed with the residual cargo remaining in the tank with the probable the weak acid liberated from the seawater ballast. Alright, ferrous iron corrosion is consequently mainly with the curve of the gasoline jet fuel, especially with the noticeable with the case of the tank, with the thick and brittle with the dark rust layer of the tank with the inspection shot should be taken to observe the condition of the rust of the bulkhead of the beam in the lab with the large amount of the rust of the found with the inspectors should be have samples of the rust and analyze to determine its nature possible with the effect of the cargo. Cargoes are loaded with the tank contaminating corrosive agents become contaminated, they become unacceptable. Alright, preparation vessel tanks into the preparation for the tank with the next cargo. Each tank should be evaluated individually due to the consideration be given the product with the grades of the last carrier as well with the product with the grades to be low with a mixture of even with the remainder of the heel with the one product with the superior with the grade of the cargo. Being loaded undesirable should be prevented, especially with the loading of the gasoline and jet fuel. Table 1 gauge a guide to preparing cargo tank for the receipt with the petroleum product. Alright, pipelines must be properly identified according to the military standard 161. They should be tested periodically with the test issue with a normal testing procedure outlined with the military activity concerned with in some cases they accomplish pipeline pressure 1.5 times with the normal working pressure not less than 100 psi with a consideration would be given to the pressure increase with the decrease with which are called with the change with the ambient temperature with the conducting with the less in conducting the test of the 10% drop of the pressure will be allowed the first 2 hours after the valve has been closed with the pressure established. If the pressure drop at the time exceeds 10% of the leak when it is properly indicated with the block valve should be checked. First, proper closure of the test with the repeat of the leaks with the indicator of the leak with the must be located required. If the repairs have been complete with the test must be repeated until satisfactory results are obtained. When the test should be recorded with the covered by the report with the leaks in the valve of the piping should be repaired promptly. If the pressure relief equipment with the bypass valve is improperly set, installed, and in excessive pressure due to product expansion will result. Therefore, some of the means of the pressure for the relief of the necessary that may be accomplished installing the bypass for the pressure relief valve of the ground line of the line valve with replacing a line valve with one half of the boil-in pressure relief. If the pipe support with the have been settled with the bed over the disc slides, they should be repaired with the replacement. If the piping should neither be sagged nor free of the sway, pipeline should be painted with their protection with the necessary utilize with the prescribed coating with the material of the pipe and hanging with the support under the piers which are submerged in high water may require coating anti-oxidization solution with the underground lines with exposed with the inspection Repair care should be taken to prevent small breaks in the protection protective coating. Some of the breaks may permit such breaks may prevent rapid localized electrolytic corrosion. Economic operation required with the seam line, with the seam trace line, with the insulated, with the, such for the insulation of the proper maintained with expansion joint with a certain type of the clamp type with the coupling to require inspection and take up. This may be done with the operational personnel with the limit of the packaging taking up the breach of the required with the repacking of the line strains or undue movement of the observer. The supervisor should be noticed at once. A provided and permit must be obtained with the depot fire chief of the officer for the charge of the post for the job with the vicinity with the before welding, flame cutting with the burning of the sand blasting, riveting, or any other work that started with which may be source of the ignition of the potentially hazardous air with the except with the emergency condition of the absolute necessary with the, no welding, burning, cutting, etc. should be performed with the containing of the flammable product lines containing flammable product. In this case, with the welding attachments over the full line with the emergency, or if the lines cannot be drained with the made with the gas free with the displaced with the water with the product which should be rapidly circulated during work progress and the pressure limitation is strictly enforced. Such work is performed only with the most skilled of the unmen under the competent supervision with all fire and safety as provided with the ready with the immediately use of the welding side with the connections with the wall with lines are very hazardous due to the possible burn through. Alright, plug value. Plug values are light products surface require with a frequent servicing and adjustment of the cover of the product. Remove the lubricant with the surface of the packaging. Seal of the plug valve should be lubricated with regular intervals. Use pressure, gun, and stick lubricants only with a non-corrosive lubricant. High quality should be. And then it shows a guide for preparation of the cargo tanks. Should be used. Valve should be lubricated with the turn freely through the 90-degree arc with the bonnet collar may be loosened with the free valve with the plugs lifted from the sheet. This should be nearly done by those responsible for the operation. Made with the supervisor should be the valve with the immediate and proper function with the leaking valve with the plug valve with the aviation fuel surface is usually required with a more frequent lubrication and attention than those of the other type. When condition permitted with the plug valve with all type of the surfaces with the periodically tested open and closed facility. Their operation with the plug valve with the frozen can only be freed enough to turn the jack of these lubricants. Gate valve. The gate valve requires servicing with the lubricating stream, steam head threads, and with the gear, depending on the valve type of the adjusting with the stuffing box to prevent leaks around with the stem. The packing of the stuffing box will be done with the maintenance personnel. Pressure relief valve. The most pressure relief valve of the factory set should be altered as just except specifically authorized by the personnel who are supplied with a reliable test gauge of the equivalent. Alright, 615, tank trucks. Operating with the tank trucks should be carefully inspect with the tank of the vehicle at the beginning of the daily operation properly with a report with the supervisor any of the failure with improper working condition mechanically with the safety of equipment. Check off the list of the proposed should be provided with the plan of the operation instruction for the operator. Servicing. In addition with the inspection of the operator tank, that should be served with the maintenance of the personnel with the 1,000 mile with at least once each month. The service included but not restricted with the inspection of the following items: horn, headlights, tail lights, warning lights, reflectors, fire extinguishers to ensure that they are filled in place in operating condition, windshield wiper to the tires, steering mechanism, coupling device for the trailer, semi-trailer, the tank line for the valve that should be examined for the leaks of the brake, tested for the proper performance, bonding capable of the ensure proper continuity of the low resistance, filters and strainers so that they are clean and free of flowing drain water from the dehydrator. Dehydrators are provided. Air eliminator flows to the valve with the ensure the cleanliness of free operation meters with the test periodically. Spare light bulbs and fuses, flares, flags, tools, wheel chocks, lid, tire chains, other reserve stems for adequacy, proper condition, pumps and power. Take off with the proper function. Remove the stones between the tires on the dual wheels. Overhaul. During periodic overhaul of the truck for the pumps and line filters, dehydrators, and eliminators, etc. should be tested and inspected. Overhaul with the required handrails, ladders, man walks should be inspected to make sure that they secure with a good order. The exhaust pipe of the muffler should be kept tight with and good repair. Our special precaution before hot works repair with the other work if it does not done on the tank or the other part of the trunk of the air is dangerous. Ignition vapor tank must be free with the gas API in accident prevention manual number 13. Cleaning mobile tanks used for transportation flammable liquid. Section A, tank valve vehicles. No hot wheels should be done with hot work should be done on any tank until the gas free has been made. With a hot work permit is secured with the offering with from officer within charge of the fire chief of the repair that has to be made with the outside part of the truck of the tank for the piping should be first be gas free. With the otherwise the more notice should be the attached to the truck warning of the repair crew that the tank might not contain explosive mixture. Alright, 616, tanker car. Most tanker cars are owned privately by the corporation, regardless of whether they are commercial or government owned, where the inspection should be made with the outlet valve, with the heater, within covers, and the coil within the tank of lead, with the dome. Safety valves should be set. Release specified pressure for the same result with the hot work and other safety items to apply with the tank truck. Maintenance should be filed with the working on tanker cars. Alright, 617, chain with the product served with the tank trucks and tanker cars. When inspection revealed the internal condition of the tank truck with the non-satisfactory product with the loaded with it should be rejected with the subjective with the cleaning with the plate with the product surface which is suitable with the recommended with the cleaning practice for the sifting products or on vehicles are shown in table 2. Alright, 618, the loading rack inspection. In order to ensure the safe and efficient operation with the frequency and inspection with the testing of the following items should be made. The old bonding wire that should be tested and maintained with a good repair to ensure the proper grounding and inspect the entire grounding system monthly to ensure the proper condition. Defective and leaking loading sleeves should not be used. Valve control chains and then ropes will be operated with a quick action valve with the loading of the rack should be inspected frequently and maintained in good repair. Water should be drained with meters, air eliminators frequently, especially when the cold weather to avoid freezing. The key keeping the strain with the clean with the mesh broken with a strainer basket should be replaced at once. Keep the rack area clean, free of items that might become safety or fire hazards. Cleaning all products spilled properly. First and fire equipment, first aid and fire equipment that must be properly maintained. Make sure operating safely and safety instructions are posted. If not legible, replace with a new set of instructions. Repairs. The following repairs should be accomplished promptly when required. Repair all leaking valves of the piping. Leaks at loading arms joints should be repaired with the replacing packing of the necessary of the swinging joint cannot be maintained in tight condition that they should be replaced. If the loading arm cannot be prevented leaking from the excessive density of the scratches of the sliding tubes, ties should be replaced. In order to prevent contamination, loading arms must be properly identified with the product handled. Meters in their shaft pickups should be installed with the small leaks. When air eliminates the leak of the spray product with successfully used, the promptly examine to determine the leak of the improperly adjustment of the faulty float operative of the valve usually cover the excessive leaky spray with the air eliminator. Vent pipes may be connected with a drum or a slop tank. In this case, overall, the air eliminator should be discharged with a visible vis gauge, and is to open a funnel before flowing through the piping drum and slop tank, so the operation of the vents may be observed with the vent lines or elimination of the gasoline strip that should not be manifolded in those non-volatile product services. 7. If the meters are not accurate, they should be adjusted and tested and resealed. 8. Missing and damaged ground cable must be replaced immediately. Link chains should be not used between clamp and a permanent ground wire, which such chains exist. They should be replaced with a continuous flexible cable. Install the counterweight arrangement to prevent the clamping line on the ground not in use. Overhead ground wire reel may be installed if desired. Switches and pilot lights should be replaced if defective. And then shows that table 2 would be a conversion chart for your tanker cars and tanker trucks. 10. Electrical equipment of the loading racks, including telephones, should be an approved type, and any of the portion loading rack damage at present with the hazardous repairs should be made immediately. If swing joints and self-closing valves do not work properly, they should be repaired if necessary and replaced. The railroad trackage included with the bumpers and must be maintained in good condition. Alright, 619, bulk lubricating oil. Lubricating oil presently stored bulk of the limited number of the oil deposits. However, the change of the drum of the bulk storage should not be made without first obtaining approval of the appropriate military department channel. The lubricating oil stored within the bulk with the supervisor of each of the storage shall prepare inspection data with the guidance for the personnel of the operating service of the maintaining lubricating oil. The storage equipment and particular attention should be given to the following: heating coils. Extra corrosion of the tank heating coils will not normally occur with the oil stopped and stored in tanks. In the event of the tank remains empty with the extent of the period of time, the heating coil should be tested for the leaks and any of the defects of the coil of the oil in this section replaced. Cleaning lines. When necessary for the cleaning the lines manifold of the pump, for example, the chain of the surface of the one over the grade lubricating the oil to another lines, manifold of the pump should be blown with a display for the oil with the last containment that should be flashed for the product with the next used. When lines chained with the additive, the oil surface to with the non-additive surface, the unusual circumstances if the appropriate for the cognizance of the department activity should be the contact with specific cleaning instruction. Lines that contain the fuel oil, jet fuel, and gasoline should not be used with the lubricating oil service unless every trace of the oil previously handled is completely removed from the line. Cleaning lube oil tank. The tanks, if they have not been previously contained lubricating oil, should be thoroughly cleaned and dried and inspected before the placing and lubricating surface of the tank lines. The manifold of the oil pump being changed from the one grade of the lubricating oil with another shall be pumped with the dry before changing method. Would do the water relative tolerance of the lubricating oil, some of the additives, some of the type of the lubricating oil, possibility with the contamination is ever present. Extreme care must be exercised, therefore, the transfer of these products to the oil to or from the storage. Alright, additional precautions. Dust caps must be kept on all file line hose openings for not in the prevent the dust and dirt contamination. Since lubricating oil is appreciably clings to the walls of the lines, or separate lines should be used for each product handled with water draw off. Facilities must be available. The operation of all tanks and vents should be given should all be gooseneck with the type of the face downwards properly screened. Section 4, corrosion control and cathodic protection. And then we're gonna cut the tape there. You know what? Let's read it until the next chapter. All right, General. The program corrosion for the control of the necessary for the prevent the rapid deterioration metal component of the fuel system, the storage tank of the pipeline, to avoid the increase the maintenance of the replacement of the problems with the operating head, the contamination of the product, possible losses of the common problems in the system are chiefly from corrosion and elements of the petroleum product from soil corrosion. Corrosion for the product with a sulfur compound, oxygen, salt water, and corrosive elements product with the sulfur compounds must be carried from the crude oil that introduced during the refining process. Oxygen, which must be is more suitable, soluble with lighter petroleum products within in water. Salt, especially in salt water, causes considerable corrosion. For the very reason of using salt water to maintain the water bottom in the tank as a moving agent for the transmit petroleum products through pipelines prohibited the freshwater bottom storage tank with the permitted at and temporarily measure for the tank bottom with the known as the leaking repairs cannot be made with all products being removed. Corrosion of the soil conditions for the underground structure for all and their surroundings, maybe the galvanic action for the electrochemical reaction when it comes with the rapid corrosion. Electrochemical reaction takes place with electrical current flow of the metal through an electrical light to points which current is grounded. During the process for the small particle of the metal go into solution with the electrolyte and are finally precipitated out as rust on iron salts, which electrolytic process is continued for some time. Weak spots and holes occur with the metal with the points where it has been dissolved with electrical chemical action. Anodic or positive loss of metal occurs when current flows out of the metal surface into the earth. However, no danger of the cathodic negative areas of the common flows through the soil of the metal. A current of 1 ampere flowing from the ear can cause the loss of 20 pounds of metal. Small value of the current can resolve the serious corrosion damage of the current discharge of the small areas such as flows of the pipe coating. Electrochemical actions are listed below. Varying strata contacting soil from the bottom of the top of the structure, varying soil along the length of the structure, varying soil moisture of the top and the bottom, differences of soil alteration between iridium between the top and the bottom, stones, roots, and other refuse to contact with the structure. Consider the contact setting of the galvanic action metal with a possible some sulfur reaction. Paint, oil, grease, and other coatings are completely continuous, mill scale, and partially off. Alright, voids and backfill where still soil contact structure, imperfect mixture of the steel structure itself with the particles of copper on the surface of the dissimilar metals, rusty steel contact with a new steel with the dissimilar metals, bright scratches of the steel, bright threads on pipes, etc. Dissimilar metals. Or 621, painting, coatings, and wrapping, all underground, underwater, fierce pipeline with valves and fittings, as well for those exposed to the moisture of self-lating atmosphere and salt spray are subject to deterioration due to the corrosion caused by electrochemical action. If the metal surfaces were perfectly protected, there would be no electrical chemical reaction, consequently no resulting in corrosion. Above ground, furious pipelines, valves, and pipe fittings are subject to corrosion due to oxidization. To protect against the deterioration exposed surface due to the painting with the coating of the underground piping it is difficult to obtain perfecting coating that is impervious to all soil solutions, at the same time capable of withstanding the stresses of the well encountered with the corrosion protection, especially need for the submarine pipe line with the lines which are subject to the water covered with a tidal range. A poor coating, with such a single coat of the paint before the pipe of the underground, with the worse for the more, none, since invariable the portion of the pipe will be scraped bare with the before the time and local galvanic action may be being added for the other electrical current present. Without good coating of the cathodic protection of the steel must be left with the bare with generally no more than usual slow corrosion. Overall slow corrosion. Alright, there's however another factor of location where it seems that the cathodic protection may be necessary for the pipe if left bare. Later cathodic protection will be difficult but very expensive due to the large exposure of the area with the metal of large protective current required. In such dubious cases of the corrosive soils and conditions, the preferred procedure seems to be coat well with least provision in future cathodic protection without much more of the normal coat when it is applied. Alright, cathodic protection. With the two dissimilar metals, electrical contact underground is usually in wet or damp soil with a galvanic action corrosion. One with the metal with the anodic metal with the maybe the expected with the following list of the most commonly used with the metal with the electromotive series. Any metal before and below and another in the table denote anodic. Any of the metal above it and connected together with the underground damp wet soil will corrode and protect the metal above it, and the amount of the galvanic action corrosion of the lower metal will increase that they may have further part table. Nickel and chromium steels fall at various points of the table depending on their composition. Alright, the cathodic end. It will protect the graphite, carbon, monols, nickel, silver, bronze, copper, brass, tin, lead, tin, solder, cast iron, copper, steel, carbon, steel, cadmium, aluminum, zinc, and magnesium. It must be recognized that no coating wrapping of the hot gold, if ever perfect, since even if this was first applied, movement of the vibration of the structure of the ground, movement of the soil, vibration of the puncture of the stones will cause soon create holidays or voids in the coating. If the cathodic protection is not applied simply the electrical current is present in the structure, but nothing to prevent the current from leaving the structure through holidays, taking the minute of the particle, the ending of the pit of the hole. This particular apparent with the cross-country section pipelines, the different type of the soils, high ampere currents may travel along the pipeline in dry soils some distance without causing the particular harm. But upon reaching the marsh, for instance, the low, more resistant soil with a natural inclination to go from the pipe, the soil with the seeking of the path of least resistant to return to the source is complete with electrical circuit. If the current is strong, they cause the severe localized corrosion that leaves the pipe through a holiday without a surprising result of the side of the hole with the pipe very rapidly created should be the current be mild and the action is less, but nevertheless exists with low resistivity. So soil corrosion causes soil resistivity. Soil causes current always seeking path of least resistance to leave the metal structure. The basic theory of the cathodic protection is surrounding the structure with electronic blanket around enough to overpower the current seeking and leaving the metal to soil to prevent these doing so. This is accomplished by putting the electrical current into the soil that flows into the structure of the protective current may be obtained with the galvanic action between magnesium anodes and steel structure rectifier with convert AC current, the direct current of which put into the soil through the scrap metal with the graphite ground bed with the first and galvanic action method consists of attaching magnesium anodes, aluminum, and zinc are less effective. Steel structure insulated wires result in galvanic action between the magnesium and the steel causes the current to flow through the soil with the magnesium. The steel structure which in blankets protect the current then returning through the insulated wire with the magnesium current over the complete circuit. This action is very similar to the ordinary dry battery. It is recommended because of the complication involved with applying with the type of the protection with the engineer experience with the field with the preliminary measurements which were the base for the design with the also supervised installation of the system. R623, maintenance of the cathodic protection equipment. The cathodic protection has been provided with the maintain with the good ordering, remain effective and necessary to maintain with a good record of the currently density with the potential of the hazard, potentially through the system major department with the normal operation characteristics may be caused for failures and fault in the system. Chapter 7, hazard connected with petroleum fuels.